Monday. Bring that money back. Hey. Marcel's out of here. Emmanuel Acho.
My dog.
Destroying us today in that suit right there. Swag War champ. Let's head back to Dallas for our big story. Where the Cowboys, 2-4. And there's a lot of finger pointing going on. NFL Network's James Slater reported yesterday that some anonymous Cowboy players called out the coaching staff. One player even said, quote, they just aren't good at their jobs. Mike McCarthy addressed the criticism yesterday. Take a listen.
I've always stated this to every team that I've coached. I think it's important to handle things as men. I mean, if you do have something to say publicly that is of most importance, I think it's important to say it to the individual, particularly in a group dynamic setting, and especially in a game of football, especially for the Dallas Cowboys.
So I'll tell you, you have an issue with McCarthy saying players need to handle things as men.
I do, bro. I do because the reason the players handled it the way they did is because Mike McCarthy would say something like players need to handle things as men. What do I mean? A player could never come out and say, man, our coach needs to handle this as an adult. Our coach needs to handle this as a man. There's a double standard, Marcellus. You know this as I know this. There's a double standard in the NFL between how players can address coaches, how coaches can address players. True. Bruce Arians can, after the first game, say, Tom Brady, it's his fault he threw both those interceptions. Tom Brady can never, after the first game, say, man, Bruce Arians was sloppy all day. He made a couple bad play calls. There is a double standard. Yeah. So the players are abiding and playing by the rules of engagement. And the rules of engagement are, you can't just sit there and call out a coach by name at a podium. You don't have that luxury. What can you do if you want to voice your opinions? You have to voice it the only way you can know how, is on the slide. There are about 3 to 5 players in a locker room that have the ability to go up to a coach, the freedom to go up to a coach and really have a heart-to-heart conversation with that coach. But those 3 to 5 players in the locker room are also getting coddled by the coach because they're usually the coach's favorite players. The other 50 or 48 players in the locker room, Marcellus, don't have that luxury. They don't have that freedom. So I do take an issue with Mike McCarthy saying we need to handle things as men because players can't handle it like you have the luxury of handling it. They don't have the freedom of speech that you have as a head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. They handled it the only way that they can, at least the lower tier players. I know because I was one. They handled it the only way that they can. Now, I wouldn't have been out there and leaking stuff. I got asked questions all the time. I got asked by a reporter, is it true that during practice you have to run down the field on kickoff on special teams with gasoline in your mouth? I was like, what? That was a serious question. I was like, what? Like, I could have lied and started drama for whatever reason. But so I wasn't that guy, but I've been in these lower tier positions. I understand I didn't have the power to go talk to a head coach. I can only do what I can do.
Interesting. We're going to have some fun with this one. The intention of language is to convey meaning, and that's why I have no problem with what Mike McCarthy said, because it's not about the language or word choice as much as the meaning. Handle it like men. And you started with a premise that I have to push back on. Please. You said that they came out, that they voiced this, and poor me, practice squad player or lower tier player, how else shall I express myself? Not through words. Through actions. Guess what? I don't need to hear it. You don't need to tweet it. You don't need to leak it. You don't need to say it. You just need to do something different. And when he's talking about handle it like men, it's because he's saying, look, this is not gender specific, even though the NFL is gender specific. There have been 25,796 men who have played the game of football. Not boys, not girls, not women, men. So he's like, look, in these walls, let's not get this confused. We're all in here together on the same team. We all put on the same color, same uniform. So when we have a problem, let's go to the person with the same uniform because they're on your team. Jane Slater, respect to her and her reporting. She ain't on your team. She's just trying to do her job. And your job is to get better at your job. And my job is to get you better at your job. So why would you ever feel, and I think this is societal, I think it's a little more of the new age, whereas all of your frustrations must be voiced so that we can now get attention to them so that we can see real action. But some people wanted to skip that step, keep it archaic, keep it old school. Hey, you want something done? Just do it. I ain't got to hear about it. I ain't got to see it. And I think that's where these players got lost. They got lost in somebody save us instead of saving them damn selves. It's a weird situation to be in.
Right. That's good. Here's where you were exactly right.
Come on, baby.
You were exactly right in the fact of you're not handling or resolving anything by leaking something to the media.
It ain't helping.
Like, you're not resolving any. I don't know if you think they're like your friend. You know, like, yeah, man, if you just think they're your counselor, so you feel like venting and what. You aren't handling anything.
Nothing.
So there's no benefit in doing that.
Right.
But here is where I take issue with it. The coach cultivates the temperature in the room.
Say it.
The coach cultivates the temperature in the room. So if you have an issue, if your players have an issue coming to you as a head coach, that is your fault. If your employees have an issue coming to you as a boss, that is your fault. You think Le'Veon Bell wants to come out and complain? You think Jamal Adams wants to come out and call out Adam Gase? They don't. But Adam Gase has clearly cultivated a toxic temperature in the Jets locker room. So now you have other players coming out and speaking out. You don't hear things like this happening in Bill Belichick's Patriots organization, in Andy Reid's Chiefs organization. I think a coach cultivates that atmosphere. Mike McCarthy has cultivated that atmosphere. Don't be mad when the atmosphere in which you created comes back to bite you in the butt.
Yeah, that's a tough play, and I want to have fun with that because it's tough for a coach to be emotionally available for you. It's
That's
tough.
real.
I mean, it's tough. Like, I'm learning that as a father to my wife and to my kids as a husband and father. I'm like, you can't just be physically present. You got to be emotionally available. That means how are you doing? And really care and try to work with them to change it. And you're like, even in your head, you're making calculations. That ain't nothing. What are you talking about? But I have to be available for you. But you can't use all situations as examples. Bill Belichick has his own stuff to deal with. Julian Edelman coming out here to Beverly Hills dancing on parked cars. Like, you think Bill Belichick is like, I have a culture that allows players to dance on parked cars? Adam Gase, hey, you hurt Le'Veon Bell? Fine. Oh, why am I hearing while you're hurt, you're at a bowling alley having a party, and then when they ask you about it, you say, I have no regrets. No coach allows dysfunctional behavior, but it happens on all coaches' watches. So here's the thing. In life, blank runs downhill. You know why it runs downhill? Because there's a pecking order in terms of the power. And in this situation, anonymous quotes are a punk move. And punks jump up to get beat down. Brand new bit. Never with a beat. So here's some more punk moves since we want to talk about it. Kyler Murray had more rushing attempts than completed passes, and they still won 38-10. That's a punk move by the Dallas Cowboys. Oh, how about the fact that they're giving up 218 points in 6 games? Y'all want to talk about what's punk? What's punk is getting punked. And that's what they need to look in the mirror and address if they're really going to handle the situation.
I understand that. My line of delineation is very simple because I've been here before.
Okay.
If you tie my hands behind my back, don't be mad at me when now I curse you out instead of fighting you like a man.
Like a man. Oh.
If you tie my hands behind my back, don't be mad if I now spit on you instead of fighting you like a man. The problem is, players and Mike McCarthy's Cowboys players, their hands are tied behind their back. So they have to use the weapons that they can use, and that is their voice to other sources. A player at Marcellus, they can't utter what a coach can utter. Jerry Jones can come down and say this, that, and the third. Players don't have that luxury. I don't know one Cowboys player who has gone on the podium and criticized coaches. Mike McCarthy has made some bonehead decisions.
Yes.
Mike McCarthy against the Atlanta Falcons, he faked a punt in the first quarter at his own 20 or 30-yard line. That is an idiotic decision that should be criticized to the highest degree of criticism. Mike McCarthy faked another punt. That is an idiotic decision that should be criticized to the highest proportion. Mike McCarthy won for 2 when he should have won for 1 and kept it a 1-point game. That is a questionable decision, not idiotic, a questionable decision that should be questioned and criticized to the highest degree. Did any Cowboys player say anything after the game?
No.
Absolutely not.
They did not.
But did the coaches and did Jerry Jones still criticize the defense? Absolutely. There's a double standard. Cowboys players' hands are being tied behind their back. I'm not going to get mad at them when they fight with the only weapon they have left.
Look at us. We have discovered new ground. Now, this is where it gets real. Hands tied behind their back. The players may feel that way, but they have to understand who they're working with, and that the fact that Mike McCarthy also has his hands tied behind his back.
In what way?
Think about it. You sign up to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, but it comes with a caveat. One, the thing that you love most, Mike McCarthy, is play calling, offensive play calling.
That's good.
Guess what happens when you sign up to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys after your sabbatical and all your analytical studies? You cannot call the plays here. We have Kellen Moore here, our second-year understudy, who one day may take your job, but more importantly, go out there and be the play caller. And Mike McCarthy, mask on, COVID responsible, is sitting there cursing some of these play calls because it's not complimentary football. We've talked in depth about how this team was out of balance in terms of its run, play, pass, and calling. And we talk about how they're not setting their defense up by taking some of the time off the clock. All of that falls on Kellen Moore. It's not just about calling plays. It's about calling the game and knowing what you're working with. If you have the last-ranked defense, you can't throw the ball 57 times and 53 times. I don't care what the score says. So Mike McCarthy is looking at these players like, hey, we on the same team. Both of us have our hands tied behind our back. Coming up, Odell Beckham Jr. explained his antics in Sunday's loss. We'll tell you what we think about OBJ's frustration. Next, Speak for Yourself, presented by Hyundai.